Good morning, everybody, and Merry Christmas, and welcome to the Rangers Review morning briefing for Tuesday, the 27th of December. It is good to be back. Phil have been away for absolutely ages, and I'm joined by a full squad this morning. Firstly, Joshua Barrie up in, where are you, Joshua? Let the viewers know where you are.
In Pillochry, Derek, so was
Wow.
up in Dingwall on the 23rd, back down here for Christmas. It's been nice, snowed yesterday, so it almost got a white Christmas, but yeah, all good. What was it like down in Warrington? Any snow?
No snow, actually very mild, which was, I can't remember the last time I had a white Christmas, to be honest. What about you, Jonny? What's it like where you are?
Yeah, it's been fine. We got a bit of snow yesterday.
Wow.
A sort of storm coincided with my decision to take the family out for a Boxing Day walk to clear the cobwebs away. And yeah, we ended up walking into the eye of the storm here in Burnside in Glasgow. And yeah, it wasn't too popular with the families. It started bucketing rain and the wind and the hail and sleet and everything like that. But that was literally the only time in the whole day that it seemed to get really bad, that 15 minutes that we wandered out. So
Yeah.
just sod's law, I suppose.
Yeah, Ed Bruce gets in touch. He says, Merry Christmas all from Queensland, Australia. 33 today and sunny. What the hell is that all about, Ed? Unbelievable. yeah. And then Lisa Halliday also rubs it in. She says, Merry Christmas from Tenerife. We're not having that. That's a yellow card, right? Let's move on to talk all things Rangers, because of course it may be the holiday season, but Rangers are in action tomorrow. 3 wins from 3 for Michael Beale as Rangers manager after you've got to say, a hard-fought 1-0 victory up at Dingwall on Friday night. Joshua, you were there for us. We haven't really spoken about it since, because we've been off, of course. It was one of those, I think, generally considered 3 points and down the road. Not much else to discuss, really, with regards to it. Rangers winning by the solitary goal. John Lundstrom with a great strike from the edge of the area. Rabbi Matondo missed a sitter. Well, I'm sure we'll discuss him shortly. But yeah, it just keeps that winning momentum going, even though the performance wasn't entirely great.
Yeah, and you say 3 points and down the road, Derek, and they're obviously very important, and Rangers haven't been very good at getting them in the last year. I think of the 12 games in which Giovanni Van Bronckhorst dropped points domestically in the league, 9 were away from home. If you think back to Rangers' last trips to just Aberdeen and Ross County, they were in winning positions. And both of those games at the start of the year, and Aberdeen came back to draw 1-1, and Ross County came back to get a late equaliser and draw 3-3. So it wasn't that exciting a game, I think, from a neutral point of view. But Rangers also conceded, I think, 0.36 XG. They only conceded 3 shots after they'd gone ahead. So my kind of takeaway from the game, apart from the Matondo angle, was that they are starting to look a little bit more like a Michael Beale team, because the notable thing for me is when they were defending that lead, they didn't fall back and defend the box. They didn't look open as they may well have done under Van Bronckhorst. They were high, they were aggressive, they were quite compact, and they should have went and added a second. You see Morelos, the shot kind of bounces off his knee over the bar. Matondo should do much better for that. There was a couple of other breakaway opportunities. When you consider the injuries, you consider the fact that Rangers had went to Aberdeen on the earlier in the week and then travel back up the A9. 3 points is the most important thing, and they'll need to grind out games like that. I think Michael Beale will have quite enjoyed that after the drama of the 2 games before that.
Yeah, definitely. Jonny, what did you make of that game on Friday night? I think Rangers looked to me a bit leggy. I think if you watched it back, they were relatively comfortable. Ross County never really offered much. They had one chance that John McLaughlin did well to save. But that aside, it was a pretty routine performance. Rangers really should have made it more handsome, the scoreline, than what they did do.
Yeah, Rangers were the better side, but it wasn't anywhere near comfortable. I didn't think. I thought there was a lot of midfield battle going on. There wasn't too many great opportunities for Rangers. Obviously, they've got the great one at the end with Rabbi Matondo put through. Definitely got to score there, or really should score there.
Yeah.
Other than that, I couldn't really see what Michael Beale's been doing much on the training field, bar the kind of off the ball stuff, which is undoubtedly a lot better, Derek.
Yeah.
But I think the attacking side of his game that he wants to put in place hasn't really clicked into gear yet. I think he said himself that, and there's also the fact that this time of year is very, very difficult to play flowing, attractive football. It's cold. The pitches aren't great often. It's game after game after game. So all these factors put to one side, I think you can be really, really satisfied with 3 points and another 3 points on top of the 6 that have already been pulled together, and a good start to the Michael Beale era. But I would have liked to have seen a bit more on the identity front personally than we've seen so far. I know that Josh feels that there is quite a bit coming through, but for the rest of us, I would like to see a bit more, especially in attacking positions. Now, I know that will come the more he has players back from injury, and that's a huge element of this in terms of the strength of the overall squad. And once that competition kicks in, I think you'll start to see a much stronger Rangers of that, there's no doubt. But I would have thought that under Giovanni Van Bronckhorst, to be honest. The injury situation was impossible for almost any manager to deal with. And ultimately, once more of those players come back, especially in defensive positions, I think you'll see a much stronger team. And Ben Davies and Connor Goldson come back, and immediately you have a clean sheet. Now, I admit that part of that is down to John McLaughlin's excellent save from the header early doors. But still, I think overall, defensively, Rangers were pretty good. I'm talking middle to front, and when I'm looking at that game against Ross County.
Derek, can I just on the see on that point? I think you saw just how much Michael Beale needs a striker who can take the ball into feet. Because for me, where the ball broke down time after time was Fashion Sakala, who sets up the goal, has scored 2 goals in the previous 2 games. Everyone knows his value. A lot of the focus is sometimes on what he can't do rather than what he can do. But he's not a back-to-goal striker in the same way that Morelos is. I thought Morelos did okay when he came on. It was a bit of a strange game. It was quite low tempo. There was a real feel from everyone, I think, of just from a Rangers side to just get it done and get down the road. But a lot of the time, I thought the ball broke down there. But Rangers got Adam Devine in behind so many times. I think if that's, now don't get me wrong, I thought he did brilliantly. But if it's a left footer in those situations, Michael Beale himself said that Devine probably jumps up 25%. So you've got to consider that. You've got that moment in the first half with where Sakala kind of has a shooting opportunity. Then there's another Devine cutback where he almost has too many options. You have the one across the face of goal. I agree. There wasn't hundreds of chances. It wasn't a performance that stood out for attacking fluidity. But part of Beale's mantra, I'm sure, will be just being able to grind out these 1-0 wins. He spoke about that actually in the press conference, I think, at the start of the week. But yeah, the important thing was for him 6 points from 6. He's got that, set him up for the game against Motherwell tomorrow, and he'll hope that will take him in nicely to the Old Firm.
Yeah, most definitely. Rabbi Matondo, Jonny, that was a golden opportunity for him on Friday, coming on as a sub to really try and win back some of the doubters. However, he's probably increased the number in the support that have sort of written him off. Have you written him off now, do you think, after that? I know Michael Beale said he's suffered a crisis of confidence, but that on Friday night, it was hard to watch when he was through on goal. Easy to slip in. Kent, of course, I don't know if he's caught in 2 minds. He's got so much time to think about it. In the end, it was almost an easy save for the goalkeeper to make. He doesn't really do anything, tries to round him, and it's really easy for the keeper to stop him in his path. He's not really got going. I was really excited. I've got to admit, hold my hands up and say his pre-season, he looked frightening, and I was really excited about seeing him. However, I watched him in Belgium against Union, and he looked like a fish out of water, and it's looked like that ever since. Can he rectify what he's doing at the moment?
Well, it's very, very early days in late December to be judging a player who's signed over a long-term contract, especially a younger player. But there's no doubting that Rabbi Matondo has not had a good start to life at Rangers. He doesn't look like a natural fit. I wish the club would stop signing these rapid wingers, because I just don't think it's what Rangers really need. That pacing behind, when in so many of the games there's the space there.
Mm.
Isn't the weapon it is for other clubs. You know, we've seen Brandon Barker, we've seen Jordan Jones, Rabbi Matondo now. There's been others who are super quick. And I get in certain teams that's a massive boon. It's one of the most important things you look for. And it's useful for Rangers in certain games, you know, big away games, going to face Celtic, obviously the European games. But ultimately, what you're looking for is creative quality. And I'm not seeing an awful lot of that from Rabbi Matondo at the moment.
Yeah. Joshua, where do you stand? You saw a close hand at Dingwall on Friday. I actually put him in my predicted lineups. I thought he'd be one of the 5 changes that Michael Beale said at the press conference prior to the game. And they ended up being 4, if I'm not mistaken. But he did come on. He was afforded an opportunity, and he had a golden chance to really make the scoreline more handsome than what it was. Do we need to give this lad a bit more time? We need to remember he is a young player. However, after speaking, I've mentioned the Union game. I spoke to the coach and one of their players in Belgium. They said he was the best player in Belgium for the second half of last season. But he's just not shown that at Ibrox, has he?
Yeah, he's not, Derek. To me, someone said to me after the game, it was a bit like when Amad Diallo I think he hit the post instead of squaring it to Sakala at Tannadice. I can't quite remember. Obviously, he's now down, absolutely ripping up at Sunderland. Which
yes, as Stephen Gillespie says, I actually watched them yesterday against it playing Blackburn, and he looked decent. But yeah, carry on.
Good player. I think Matondo's a different style of player, but similarly, it felt like a moment where he really needed that. And Michael Beale said as much after. He said it would have been really nice if he got the goal, but Beale said all the right things. He said he's our player. He's here for a reason. Matondo I think he's just turned 22 now. You're right, Derek. He had what was a really good loan spell in Belgium last year after a couple of years more in the wilderness. He was at Stoke before that. He went for a big money move when he was younger, and he wants to not get trapped, I guess, in being defined by that big money move when he was younger. But to do that, he needs to show a bit more. I wrote about maybe a week ago. It's on my Twitter page quite recently, kind of hypothesizing how it could work under Beale, or asking the question, could it? When Ross Wilson spoke about players who need to give a better return on the money that was paid for them in the summer, I think Matondo definitely falls into that bracket. We know he's going to play a different role to what he played under Giovanni Van Bronckhorst. I think confidence comes into it a lot, and I think you could see when he was playing on that right touchline in a team that's not functioning well, he didn't look confident. And he was brought off against Hearts, and Van Bronckhorst went out his way to almost criticise him in the press conference after, when he wasn't asked about him, which is not something that he did all that regularly. He was asked about Scott Wright, and he went back to talk about Matondo. He's going to play in more central positions under Beale. But I think regardless of the position he's playing in, the system he's playing in, it is about confidence, because you can see when a player comes onto a pitch sometimes that they are low on confidence. I thought when he switched the ball out of play to Kent, you could see it. I thought when he was bearing down on goal, he didn't have much confidence in him. So obviously there is qualities there that Rangers can harness. On the topic of pace, I agree with that to an extent, but I think Matondo's strength is also pace over short distances. It's not always running in behind. And if Rangers are able to utilise that, then that still can be effective. But I agree, he's not really shown anything. Equally, he's not really had a consistent run of games. Someone I've seen on Twitter said, if anyone can get a young player like that firing, it's Michael Beale. If you cast your mind back to what he said about Alex Lowry in the press conference last week, is one area that he has a lot of expertise in. It's the area where his skill set is probably the strongest in developing young players. Getting them into positions that work for them and building up their confidence. And we have seen this movie before with players at Rangers. But to your question, Derek, he looked void of confidence. And I think it takes a while for a player to come back and really make an impact after they've had such a difficult start to life at a club.
The thing is, Derek, he looked quite bright when he first came on. He had a nice shot. Just looked like he wanted the ball. And if that shot has gone in, the one that's saved when he's through one-on-one, we're saying, Rabbi Matondo looked bright. It was a good cameo.
Yeah.
The fact that he's missed such a straightforward chance, is what's driving the narrative around that performance. but he should have scored. So that's what's going to happen. But when you're a Rangers player, you need to take these moments, and that was a moment for him to start rewriting his own narrative.
Yeah.
Time will tell. But listen, there's something there. There's no doubt about it. There's a combination of skills that, if they can be put back together in the right order, there's a player. It's whether or not Michael Beale has the time and patience to do that, and whether or not the Rangers fan base has the time and patience to kind of stick with a young player who's misfiring, because fundamentally this is a club that needs to win week in, week out. So you can't have a player out there that's missing chances like that consistently, trying to get their game back into some kind of rhythm. It's going to need somebody to sort of step up to the plate and bring some grit, determination to it. That's just the way it is, unfortunately. It's not a club where you can get away with kind of stutter step performances.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a tough place to play. I think recent interviews I've done with Nacho Novo, even Harry Forrester, that was over the last couple of days, said it's there was some players that just the mentality, you need to have the right mentality to play for Rangers, and certainly the jury is out on Rabbi Matondo at the moment. You mentioned Alex Lowry there, Josh. I wanted to touch on a couple of comments that have popped in here. First from a good friend Denzo, says, why we bring on Scott Wright when more creativity is needed? I think touching on the match against Aberdeen with Alex Lowry on the bench. And Alan says, were he surprised when Matondo came on instead of Lowry? Now, Michael Beale was quizzed on this prior to the game, and I thought his answer was very interesting. He said, when he bangs on his door asking why he's not playing, he says to him, would your teammates pick you? Now, I thought that was very telling. What do you make of that, Joshua? That seems to me as if it's possibly an attitude thing, perhaps, or he needs to apply himself more in training to earn that chance in the first team.
Yeah, well, I think there's probably two sides of it. One of which is that Scott Wright and Matondo are both more likely to run in behind. I think against Aberdeen, he wanted maybe a player who could kind of hold the width at points. And we've seen that with Kent, who was wide for kind of 15 minutes. And against Ross County Matondo, you see him running behind on two occasions. He doesn't capitalise on it, but I think that was the idea, with the game being squeezed up a little bit. But you're right, that's where Beale talks about. That's where his experience is and working with young players, developing young players. And he effectively said, when he's in the team, he's not going to drop out the team. But he said, would your teammates pick you? And that's a big thing for young players. Now, you've got to imagine that Beale's being very deliberate about Lowry, about when he puts him in, because there's so much expectation on him, so much pressure. I do find it interesting that he's not come on in either of those games away from home. I'd be surprised if he doesn't play any part tomorrow against Motherwell. But it's inevitable that when a club have a young player who's really exciting and supporters want to see him, and there's players who play ahead of him that they deem not as good, there is going to be this kind of attention given towards it. So who knows? Maybe Beale wants Lowry to improve more off the ball. Maybe there's things that we don't see behind the scenes. But again, this is the area that Beale reaffirms he has lots of experience in developing young players. It seems like a very deliberate answer he gave, though, Derek, kind of in keeping with all of his press conferences so far.
It was very interesting, I thought, Jonny, because prior to his first match, he said that Alex was very close to starting the game, and we've not seen him yet. And then his answer prior to the Ross County game, that sort of told me that he's maybe not doing enough in training to warrant time on the pitch.
Yeah, I've talked about this before, Derek. When you're a young player at Rangers, you need to take it. No one will give it to you. And this is the demands of the club. It's the demands of the players that are already there. And it's the demands of the fan base. And fundamentally, Alex Lowry hasn't fully convinced three managers now, because, you know, he was able to get in, I would imagine, under Gerrard. He was a young kid then, to be fair. But you've then got Giovanni Van Bronckhorst, and you've now got Michael Beale. He's got to convince these guys. He's got to convince them on the training fields, and he's got to convince them that he can be trusted. And I think that's a good point that Beale made about convincing his teammates. It's all very well having a little flash that they get stuck up on Twitter, that gets 10,000 likes because you've stuck the ball over the head of the captain. But can you do it throughout an entire session over the course of many weeks, showing that your quality is not just a flash in the pan, it is consistent, that it is able to be replicated in a game? And that's what Alex Lowry has to do. It's as simple as that. It sounds harsh, but we all know that this harsh thing is fundamentally true. No one will take Alex Lowry and say, there you are, pal, there's your Rangers career for you. You know, he's got to take it. And part of that is budging these guys out of the way. You're talking about Arfield and Matondo, Josh, running in behind. And like that's up to Lowry to not necessarily change his game, but adapt to whatever the manager wants from him and deliver. And if he can't do that, then Alex Lowry will end up on loan somewhere. It's as simple as that.
It's a very congested position as well. That he did touch on. The Rangers do have plenty of options in that position, but it's down to Alex to obviously convince the manager that he's deserving of some game time.
He's a huge talent.
What's that?
He's a huge talent.
Oh, there's no question.
We've seen flashes of that. There's no question about his talent, but talent is always beaten by hard work when talent doesn't work hard.
Yeah, I totally agree. Let's get to one or two more comments. I wanted to touch on, the Stephen Davis news. First of all, it never rains, but it pours. An absolute bombshell over the last few days where, of course, Stephen Davis was out to get a scan after falling awkwardly in training. And now turns out it's a serious knee knock and he won't feature for the remainder of the season. Rangers released a statement saying that he suffered an injury to his knee and will miss the remainder of the season. As always, Stephen has the best wishes of everyone at Ibrox as he embarks upon his recovery. Horrendous news, this, Joshua. He turns 38 on the 1st of January. His contract runs out in the summer. Could this be a sorry end to what has been a fantastic couple of spells at Ibrox?
Yeah, you hope not, because to my memory, I can't remember certainly Stephen Davis having too many injury problems throughout his career. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know if he's had one as serious as this. So to have it at this age, and you're right, Derek, you always want players who have had a career like Stephen Davis has had to go out in a better way than having an injury. As you say, it wasn't even a big tackle in a game. And I thought against Hibs when he came on, it showed that he still had a role under Michael Beale, because he came on for 25 minutes, kept the ball, kept Rangers ticking over, but just added an extra body in the middle. He was signed on at the end of last season because despite his age, he still had a role to play. And that was a narrative before the 2021 title win, when he was obviously, I think he won a couple of Player of the Year awards that season because he was so good. So hopefully it's not the last time you see him in the Rangers shirt, but I think logic tells you it may well be. And it only exacerbates the need for a player signed in that position, someone who can come in and start every week at the base of midfield, which I think has to be I think it would have been the priority for Rangers, whether this injury had happened or not. But of course, hugely unfortunate. And you hate to see someone like Stephen Davis have that serious injury at this stage of his career.
It's another horrendous blow, isn't it, Jonny? I've never known a season like this where there's been so many, not just niggles, but long-term injuries that players have suffered. And Stephen Davis, I know Barry Ferguson has come out and said he should be given a new contract. I'm not entirely sure, to be honest, but it is a sad way to go if this is the end.
That's a really, really difficult one. Michael Beale will have to assess that. He knows what Stephen Davis can bring to the dressing room, bring to the Rangers team. Listen, it's a very hard sell to say, let's give another round of contracts out to these old war horses in the midfield areas. It really is for fans who I think are just desperate to see some young blood coming in and an injection of physicality and energy, and a change of the menu in that area, fundamentally. But at the same time, you don't like to see a legend like Stephen Davis checking out of the football club with such a serious injury, and perhaps checking out of his career with such a serious injury. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if Stephen Davis comes back. I think when he's played this season, he hasn't really looked to me like a player who's vastly diminished. I thought he should have been the first name in the team sheet in domestic games. And I still stand by that. The guy can move the ball as well as he ever did. He's more of a controller of a game now than he's ever been. And he just didn't really fit the Van Bronckhorst mould. And then, of course, he's not really had a chance to fit the Beale mould because, it's only been 2 games and he's out, or 3 games and he's out. I think 2 games, obviously, and he's out. it's incredibly sad because this is a genuine Rangers legend we're talking about here. He was superb in his first spell, led Rangers to glory and several trophies, and was a key part of that in that engine room under Walter Smith. He comes back. It looks like it's going to be a short period. I remember being on a podcast at the time. He signed in December, January, and he didn't play for the first 2-3 months. And I remember talking about it, saying, "Yeah, he's not going to get a new contract.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like he's going to stay around because it's just not. It's not working." And then right towards the end, he got up to speed. I think in the last few games of the season, Rangers went on a 6 or 7 game unbeaten run, including beating Celtic, and Stephen Davis was peerless over that period once he got himself into the team. And all of a sudden you're saying, right, okay, that's the real guy. That's the guy that they signed. And since then, you can't argue with what he's achieved and how he's performed. It's been another excellent spell for him. And they say never go back, but Stephen Davis is going to stand as a lasting testament to why that cliche is wrong. It depends on the circumstance, and the circumstances on this one were perfect. And he has really, really helped drag this club up by their bootstraps and take them back to where they need to be, winning championships, winning Scottish Cups, getting to a European final. So he'll always go down, I think, as one of the great players of the club. In 25 years' time, he'll be absolutely considered one of the great Rangers, and absolutely rightly so for me.
Yeah, and as John Dooley says, Stephen Davis is one of very few players to play in 2 European finals for the club. It shows you the calibre of player that he is and the longevity as well. He has been a breath of fresh air for Rangers, a real true custodian of the club. And heartbreaking news to hear that in the last few days that he's out for the season. We wish him the very best in his recovery. Stephen Gillis makes an interesting point. Straight to the B team coaching. Imagine what he could teach these young lads. I would like to see him involved in. I'm
not sure that's a thing that happens anymore at Rangers.
Yeah, but as a coach, Jonny, I think I could see him as a coach. Could you not see him as a Rangers coach in the future?
Well, you could see him as a Rangers coach in the future, but I think the days of the B team taking on players who want to become coaches and managers in their own right is gone.
Yeah.
That I think that's old school thinking, and I don't think that's the way a modern forward-thinking academy thinks anymore. I think in the academy, what they want is people who are absolutely focused on youth development. And they want to be youth development coaches. They're not targeting necessarily becoming first team coaches.
Yeah,
that's the youth coaching is their niche, and that's what they want to do. And I think this idea of taking a first team player and just saying, right, he's a good guy to have around the place. Let's just dump him into the academy. I don't think that's a very good strategic approach, and I don't see that as being something they'll do long term. What they're looking for in the academy is people who are essentially coaches and teachers, people with an academic background almost in or understanding of how best to transmit information to young people. So taking a player and just chucking them in there, it's a bit like just dropping a grenade in, and I don't see that happening.
So that's an interesting.
I think we can get rid of this trope of he'd be great in the academy. It just won't happen, I don't think.
Yeah, I do like the idea of if I was a young kid, coming up and learning off these guys that have done it, have played in 2 European finals, that played at the highest level. But yeah, listen, it's an interesting debate. As Craig Hamilton says as well, great players don't necessarily make great coaches. I think with Davis, however, I think even if it isn't at Rangers, I think that is an avenue he will go down wherever it may be, and I think he will be a good coach as well. He's someone that you certainly listen to when he talks football. Just wanted to touch on this on the back of that, Joshua. Craig Mackay says, considering we've not spent any money on a centre midfielder in quite some time, why isn't McCann getting a look in? Given the injury to Stephen Davis, do you think we'll see a bit more of Charlie McCann now? Does that sort of clear his avenue to the first team?
I think Charlie McCann might be the most expensive midfielder at Rangers, because obviously Kamara 50 grand, Lundstrom technically free, Jack free, Davis free. Have I missed anyone? Central midfielder.
Lundstrom.
Kamara was 50k.
Yeah. So it's just an interesting side note. But you'd imagine you'd if any time you're gonna if there's any time you will see more of him, it would be around about now. But I think regardless, Rangers needed to go and get a deep lying midfielder, and they hopefully will do in the January window. For me, it's the one area of the pitch that I think in other areas you could kind of survive throughout the season. Obviously, centre back now, you'd hope that Goldson and Davies will be able to play together. You've got King there as backup, and then if Suter or Hollander can come back, that's a bonus, but you don't need to rely on them, and you kind of work that out in the summer. Fullback, you've seen with Devine that he can cover. You've got Ridvan coming back. You've got Barisic coming back. You've got depth up front with Cholak. He's missed the last 2 games, but that's last 3 games, but that's quite rare in the context of the season. And then behind the striker, when Lawrence and Hadji are back, alongside Lowry, Kent, and Tillman, you've got so many options there. For me, what you definitely need is someone with an engine just in front of that can sit in front of the defence, that can play a number of different roles, whether it is going box to box at points, taking the ball off the centre backs. I think that's what Rangers need, and I'd be really surprised when Beale speaks about a couple of areas that I think they were going to refresh regardless. When he's been speaking about the transfer window, I'd be surprised if it's not in that position, Derek.
Yeah. Listen, Joy, before we wrap up, it's an area I think we've spoke about at length. They need central midfielders, don't they? But January is such a difficult time, difficult window to bring in players to strengthen the side. Usually it's players that are not playing at the moment, or you need to pay a premium because of you're midway through the season. So it's not as easy as it sounds just to add quality in the midfield department.
No, it's a very, very difficult time of year to actually go out and get high quality guys who are going to improve the team. We've seen that. We thought that in the last January window that the team had done a good job. We were all sitting here pretty happy with the work that had been done, getting in Amad Diallo, getting in Aaron Ramsey, and it didn't work out. It was a gamble. We said that at the time in terms of Ramsey, but I think the club will have to be very, very, very careful not to have another bad window. Ross Wilson is already under a bit of pressure over transfer dealings. I think, and I've said before, I know it's not popular. Sometimes it's a little bit unfair, some of the criticism, because I don't think his role is about recruitment. That's part of his role, but there's many, many other facets that make up his day, and there's a brand new recruitment team in. And that's the other thing that's going to be interesting about it, Derek. This is the first time you've seen John Park in action.
Yeah.
Because he got his feet in the door in the summer with a whole host of other new scouts. And it'll be, this is the first time we're kind of seeing those kind of players that he'll be recommending coming through. And we know that he's got a very, very good track record in terms of identifying unheralded European talent. So there could be a few names there that we're just not expecting, that just come out of the blue. I'm fully expecting that, but I think it's so important that Rangers can go and get a couple of players in this January window that really look like they mean business. That'll help change the narrative that surrounds this club. Yeah, it'll help change the negativity, because if you go out and do that, then all of a sudden, I think Ross Wilson's record looks a fair bit better, and I think Rangers could do without that sort of kind of underlying noise that surrounds his position from fans who are justifiably looking at his record and saying we need more bang for our buck when it comes to going out and signing players. I happen to think that the summer business was actually pretty good. You know, I think Cholak, Tillman, don't think there's too many people are going to be arguing about their quality. I've seen enough of Ridvan to say I feel that he'll be a very, very good signing. Michael Beale's already alluded to the fact that he was aware of him and he thinks he's going to be a talent that he's looking forward to working with. Don't think anyone would complain about Tom Lawrence. I think we all agree that that's going to be a deal that'll come off. John Suter will depend on whether or not he can stay fit. If he does, we know he's a good player.
Yeah.
And that's 5 of the 7. You know, Matondo we've already kind of touched on, and that one's going to be a more difficult one. There's no doubt in my mind about that. It's going to take more time, and it may be that doesn't work out based on what I've seen so far. But players can eventually settle and turn it around, get confidence. But overall, I don't think that summer tranche of players that many people have talked about has been actually too bad. But if you can go out and get a couple right in this window, it will really reinvigorate the squad, especially in that central midfield position. I don't know if Josh feels maybe that it's 2 players required in that area, or Josh, would you rather see a right winger and a central midfielder? How would you, if you were to go and get 2 top quality players, what positions would they be in?
Well, it looks like Beale's going to play 2 strikers for the majority of games. I think with Kenton behind. So I don't know if the right wing conversation is parked for a while. I agree that you probably need a player of that profile in the squad who, like Kent on the left, can be a threat out on that side. But I don't know if that's a priority now. I mean, it has to be that position. I think we all agree on deep in midfield. But then it depends on what happens in the outgoings, because you can't sign 2 midfielders and play and keep Lundstram and Kamara on the bench. Kamara is a player who we've spoken about. I think he will improve under Beale and maybe go in the summer. Yeah. He's too valuable an asset to keep on the bench all season. Lundstram's one of the biggest earners at the club, and again, I don't think you can keep him on the bench. And I think there is obviously a lot of quality there you can harness. I just don't think his best football will come when he's picking the ball off the centre back. So I think that's the priority position. Elsewhere, would you maybe say another centre back if you can't depend on Suter and Helander? You probably don't want more wages in that position. So maybe just another offensive option, because again, you can't depend on Roof. So Rangers are in it's like quite a difficult position, because Beale's saying he wants to assess the squad when it's fully fit. I think already you've seen him kind of coming to terms with the reality of the injury situation when he's been speaking about it. There was an update he gave, I think it was before the Ross County game, where he went through the number of players that were carrying knocks and whatnot. John Lundstram took an injection to play through the County game and the Aberdeen game. There's a reality that all these things will be going on behind the closed doors of all medical departments in football. But at the moment, Rangers have had a particularly bad 6 months that they need to put right. So you could probably make the argument that wherever Rangers were to sign a player, because of the injuries that have happened, it wouldn't be a bad idea, because they've kind of paid the price for, I guess they've had enough depth, but they've just had so many injured players. And then you've also got to consider the likes of Hadji and Lawrence. When they get back, how long does it take them to get up to speed? The exact same with Helander and Suter. So you could probably make an argument for lots of positions. I don't think anyone would disagree that Rangers need a midfielder, though.
I think Beale's been pretty clear that he sees it as going out and getting someone that comes into the starting 11 to improve it.
Yeah.
It's not going to go out and get a player who can play left wing, right wing, number 9, number 10 if necessary, and kind of a guy that you can fit in to the system when you need him. Like Celtic did that with Haskabanovic, that someone who can add to the squad. I don't think Michael Beale's looking for that. He's looking for someone or a couple of players who are decisive. Personally, one of those for me, if it was only given 2, I'd go out and try and get a keeper. It's a very difficult time of year to get a keeper, because if it's a good one, they're likely to be playing, and it's not going to be a club that you're not likely to get a club that are going to be that keen to lose such an important player. But I just look at the stats around the goalkeeping situation, and it's, for me, a big worry. I think John McLaughlin, personally, guys, I would now put John McLaughlin back in as number 1.
Oh, wow.
Really? I asked him this, and he said he's not strengthening the goalkeeper department in January. So, I mean, that's caused a bit of debate among supporters who feel it's a priority.
Listen, Michael Beale said he didn't really understand the debate around the goalkeeping situation. I think what he's talking about is we've got a really good young keeper in Robbie McCrory, good backup in John McLaughlin, and Alan McGregor as an experienced player. My problem is with that is, listen, Al McGregor, the stats, guys, and Michael Beale might turn around and say, I don't care about the stats. I see him every day. The numbers have Al McGregor at the bottom of the league.
Yeah.
The second worst goalkeeper in the league. The only keeper that's worse than Al McGregor, based on the statistical analysis of it at the moment, is Hibs keeper, and I think he had one game where he had an absolute nightmare. I was talking to someone about this the other day, and they said right at the start of the season he had a complete nightmare where he basically let in 2 ridiculous goals. which have skewed the stats. But McGregor is basically sitting at a goal saved above average score of negative 4.29, which means based on the average of what a keeper should and shouldn't save around the expected goals, Al McGregor has let in 4.29 more goals more than he should have. And that's
not good reading.
That's really grim reading. At the top of the league, Kelly Roos of Aberdeen has saved 5.5 goals more than he should have. So that's a swing between Aberdeen and Rangers just in the goalkeeping department of 10 goals. Joe Hart at Celtic not having a great time, saving slightly less than he should have, 0.42, negative 0.42, but still, that's a swing of nearly 4 goals between what the Rangers keeper should save and what the Celtic keeper should save. And that can be the difference between a title or not. When Alan McGregor was at his peak performance levels since his return for 55, I think his goal saved above average was something like 11 for the season. Josh, you might correct me. Maybe it was
high. It was maybe 9, but it was high.
It was high. You know, Alan McGregor was absolutely immense that season statistically, and you could see that with your eyes, and you could see it in the numbers. And these numbers now are pretty stark. You know, there's another stat about shot stopping. Basically, percentage of sort of shots, and McGregor is again the lowest in the league for that. There's a number of kind of concerning details if you look through the underlying data about the goalkeeping position at Rangers. Now, Rob McCrory, for me, because I don't watch him every day in training, obviously, I saw those 2 games against Alashkert and Celtic, and I thought he looked excellent in those games. But he's relatively untested in terms of throwing him in as the Rangers number 1. And no one's kind of put him in that position, Gerrard, Van Bronckhorst, Beale. So it's kind of hard to suggest that he should be Rangers number 1 based on what we've seen, because we've not seen an awful lot. John McLaughlin, I think, is excellent with the ball at his feet and moves the ball really well and is very kind of calm, but he's not a shot stopper. That's not, I don't think, a natural part. He's not one of those spectacular shot stoppers. Rangers have had them in goal for 35 years. You think Andy Gorham, Stefan Klos, even Ante Nemi, who didn't play very often for Rangers. When he did come in, brilliant shot stopper. You come back to Alan McGregor. It's been an embarrassment of riches, the goalkeeping position, in terms of the ability to make spectacular saves. I don't think John McLaughlin really has that. So I think no matter who you put in, there's always going to be the clamour to change it up. And I think under Beale, based on the numbers that I'm seeing, I don't think there's that much difference now between John McLaughlin and Al McGregor in terms of the shot stopping. I still think Al McGregor's a better shot stopper, but if you're seeing the numbers there and the goals that he's letting in, I would just put John McLaughlin in on the basis that he can build up the play quicker and he's better with the ball at his feet. And in modern football, that's a big element of the play going forward. So, Josh, listen, you've been talking about that for quite a long time. You talked about how John McLaughlin was a key part of the build-up that Van Bronckhorst was wanting to create. And I just think that trumps probably the shot-stopping element of it.
It's difficult, yeah. As I think we've said, I think everyone said for the last 6 months, it's probably a issue that Rangers should have sorted in the summer because it's one of last season's problems that have been carried over. You still have that reality that it's like if you know you have a 1v1 in the 80th minute, who do you want in? And it's probably Alan McGregor. But there's also the reality in all these conversations, whether it be with McGregor, Stephen Davis, any player, that sometimes players just get to an age where they have to retire. It happens to every single person, you know, regardless of sentiment. I actually think that the need for a goalkeeper under Van Bronckhorst, I think it was quite important at the start of the season. I thought you've seen Rangers, who didn't look great anyway, building up under him, regress a bit when McGregor went back in. But McGregor, you know, played under Gerrard and Beale last time, and it's not as if he can't kick the ball or there was an interview you did, Derek, with someone who was saying 20 years ago he was seen as actually quite a modern keeper in the way that he was. Remember who that was with?
Yeah. Stephen Parston. Yeah, he said he was magnificent with his feet before that was a thing.
Yeah, so I don't think McGregor can kind of invite pressure in the same way that McLaughlin likes to, and that maybe has its value at points. But he can play out. I think the difficulty is if you change your keeper, and inevitably one of them has a bad game, then the debate just goes on and on and on. So I agree with you. It's difficult to go and find the number one in January, but also you can't look at those numbers and say if both Rangers goalkeepers who have played in the league this season, goals saved above average is in the negative, they've not made a positive difference over the course of the season, and that makes a big difference. And you need all your marginal gains to make big differences. So it definitely is an issue. Maybe there's a bit of a clean. We have to assess it from when Michael Beale comes in with a more functioning defence, with the games played, etc., etc. But I agree up to this point, you can't argue that the Rangers goalkeepers just as a whole haven't made a positive impact, I think, on the goals saved, the goals conceded, which is going to hurt you over the course of the season. Just as in the last title winning season you saw with Alan McGregor, the incredible contribution he did make, which, well, as you say, Jonny, 9 goals above average or something like that, which was an incredible season.
Yeah.
Derek, they used to say Andy Goram would save Rangers 10 points a season, and there was no advanced stats around at that time you could actually measure that. But to the eye test, that felt true. Yeah. Just like when Alan McGregor was at his best during 55, you could see that. You could see what he was doing. And it felt tangible. The key problem for Rangers this season, if you look at it statistically, if you combine John McLaughlin and Alan McGregor, they have lost maybe, I think, I don't have the exact figures for John McLaughlin in front of me, but the last time I looked at it, it was around 3 goals he'd cost Rangers. So if you add that to McGregor's 4 point whatever, so let's say 7 goals conceded more than Rangers should have on the basis of the keepers that they've had. And that suggests that Josh is right to say that it was a summer problem that should have been dealt with in the summer. Yeah. Because if you add those 7 goals back in, then what does the Premiership table look like right now? We're only talking about in the league. This StatsBomb's data for just the league. So
I know
you have a goalkeeper that's performing flat at 0, and I think the title race looks quite different.
Yeah. Listen, it's an interesting one. What happens, Michael Beale has said it's not an area of the pitch he's looking to strengthen in January. I know a lot of supporters disagree. But yeah, let's hope that it certainly improves. I think that the Davis and Goldson, touch wood that they stay fit, may alleviate some of those concerning figures. And Rangers need a stable defence. There is no question about that.
See, just to touch on this again, Derek, sorry to just jump in, but there might be a temptation to say, well, but Ross McCrory is the answer, or Ross.
Certainly not. Robbie McCrory, maybe.
Robbie McCrory is the answer, and he's going to be the answer. But my position on it is, well, he should play now then. You know, I don't understand why he would be the answer in the summer, but not now. Do you know what I mean? If he becomes the Rangers number 1, I get that. It's a young player that's come through. People have faith in him. He did really well when he played his 2 games. But, like, this is the time to be thinking about the future because the league is essentially gone. And McGregor and McLaughlin aren't playing well, so why wouldn't you...
I think it's easy. I don't think that they'll be saying that in the dressing room. If they win on New Year's Day, the league is on.
Yeah, I agree with that.
That's if they lose in the second, I agree with you, Jonny. But at this moment in time, I think it's still live. But Rangers need to win on New Year.
Rangers need to win every single game.
Yeah, no question. But they need to beat Celtic
every single game. Yeah. But even 6 points behind with 2 games, Old Firm games left to play. If Rangers come back, I think it would be the greatest comeback in a league title that I could think of. This Celtic team doesn't lose games, so I don't know where this optimism is coming from. Personally, I'm not trying to do it down, but I just realistically and being balanced and fair,
Well, we'll know a lot more. If they win tomorrow night and they beat Celtic on the second, we'll be in a better position to judge where the season is at. I think anything less than a victory, and it's done for me. So they need to win. If they win that, then we're looking at it very differently. But listen, it's two massive games coming up for Rangers. They need to win tomorrow night. There's no question against a Motherwell team that are struggling. They need to win.
Listen, if Rangers win every game from here to the end of the season, they'll win the league. But I don't see where the optimism that would happen, it could possibly come from, based on what we've seen so far. And Michael Beale would be, he'd be walking on water after that. Let's be honest. It's just these little games when you're going up to Dingwall, for example. If you're going to St Mirren, if you're going to St Johnstone, that Rangers have struggled with in the last 18 months. And I know they got through the game at Dingwall just there, but just generally struggled with. There was a 3-3 draw, of course, earlier in the last season. And St Johnstone, they've already been defeated 2-1 this season at McDiarmid Park. These kind of games, I think, are still going to potentially trip Rangers up, given it's the same squad. Michael Beale can put two people up front and try and offer more creatively, which he is doing. But I still think the squad needs more quality in the forward areas.
Yeah. For
Rangers to be kind of genuine title contenders this season. And Celtic just win every week, even if it's 1 minute from time, Derek, and it's 0-0. Do you ever get excited? Do you ever go, oh, title race is potentially back on here? Or do you just go,
no.
Nah, they'll score. They'll score.
Yeah.
I remember I used to feel that way about Walter Smith's Rangers teams.
Yeah.
In the 90s.
That's what happened at Pataudry could be quite big, because I don't think that's ever happened. Well, certainly not happened. Rangers being behind in injury time, coming back and winning the game. Wins like that.
That's a great point, mate.
Turn things around. But listen, they need to win tomorrow night. Failure to beat Motherwell in. I think we're staring down the barrel, really. But listen, it's very interesting points made. Bumper show today for this Christmas special. We will be back again tomorrow, folks, to look ahead to that Motherwell game in closer detail. Of course, the press conference later this afternoon, so we'll get an injury update as well and find out who is available for that match. But yeah, thanks to everyone for interacting with the show as ever. It's greatly appreciated. Just a reminder, we've still got our Christmas offer on at the moment, just £1 for 2 months worth of content. And we've got an annual subscription on also as well, £26 for the entire year, which I believe is 25% off, Jonny, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, so £26. Head over to rangersreview.co.uk/subscribe to take advantage of that. It really is a wonderful offer, folks. So make sure you take advantage of it before it reverts back to the £2.99 per month offer. And if you want to subscribe as well to our YouTube channel, that's totally free. And we're on every weekday morning, more or less. And we've got our pre-match and post-match videos from the Rangers matches as well. So I'd urge you to do that also. Okay, we'll be back again tomorrow. Thank you to Joshua and Jonny and to everyone watching and listening. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. Bye for now.